I'm Dr. Tamara Fackrell, and I am an attorney mediator, and I taught at the BYU Law School part-time for 14 years. And when I was teaching the students there, I got really excited about teaching them principles of communication, mediation, and negotiation. And I thought, wow, wouldn't this be awesome to be able to teach this to kids? And that's exactly what I did. Is I went home and I started penciling out how to teach these problem-solving skills to kids at a very young age. And then I got some grants. And so I've been teaching character education for over 20 years. And then I also went and got my PhD in marriage, family, human development after practicing law for 10 years. And so I've worked a lot with the courts and the juvenile system, and I've worked with families mainly in my practice, and it's been something that I really have loved. And I'm going to talk today about raising an emotionally intelligent child, teaching techniques to teach your child, and of course yourself, how to achieve abundance. And so parenting, one thing you should know about me is that I am the mother of 6 crazy children, 5 boys, active, fun boys, and 1 daughter. I had 6 kids in 10 years. So I definitely know the throes of parenthood. I've been married to my husband, Jake, for more than 25 years. He was my high school sweetheart. And together, we have been having so much fun parenting our children. You can see these pictures that I put up. I just wanted to let you know that I understand that parenting isn't going to be a perfect process. You can see in one of the ones, there is a pudding mix all over the floor. And they are there tasting the pudding mix as well. And you can see my little guy in the back. He has his soccer shirt on backwards. So, some of those days are just backwards. I remember recording in my journal a day where I went to the park with the kids, and I figured out when I got home that I had my own pants on backwards. So things aren't going to be perfect as we go through parenting, but I think that a lot of times as a parent, you don't know what's getting through. And I think that the really good news is that it does get through. If you stay consistent as a parent and you keep on trying and you never give up, you see the fruits years later. You see the fruits of your kids having testimonies and your kids being raised in a way, something that they share your values, and a lot of joy comes from that. So that is the exciting part. And so the hook of the talk is basically to never give up in your parenting, to keep on trying no matter what's going on. We're going to talk today about emotional intelligence, and this was coined by Daniel Goleman. He teaches about emotional intelligence and defines it as the ability to manage ourselves and our relationships so that we can reach our goals. So I've divided it into four pieces or quadrants. So first is self, and that's I and how you're in the equation. And then the second part is you, or how the other person is involved. And then the third part is we, and that's the relationship. And then the fourth part is goals. Now the I, we, and you, those perspectives have long, in the early 1900s, Martin Buber is who kind of developed that thinking or that philosophy. And we're going to take that philosophy today and also Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence and see what we can do to help our kids manage their relationships so that they can reach their goals. So there's 7 different things that we're going to talk about today, and I'm crazy about acronyms. You'll know that about me if you've listened to me before. And so I made up the acronym SELL TAG, and it's SSELL TAG. And the idea is that, kids play tag and run away from one another and you're it. And we want to SELL TAG. We want to have connectivity. We want our kids to be turning towards other people and towards ourselves to have that connection. And so the first S is self-awareness, just knowing what you bring to the table and having your child realize things about their personalities and their natural skills. And then the second S is self-control and self-mastery. E is empathy, or having emotional awareness for other people. And then the 2 L's, I teach it to kids, listening and love. So listening to other people and showing love for other people. And then we move over to the we concepts. So that's teamwork. And then I'm going to teach you the ABCDE model, which is the best model for proactiveness in your life, for problem solving. And there's a lot of different creative methods that use the ABCDE model. and then goals, of course. So cell tag. Now, I am a professor, so I am going to be quizzing you at the end of the talk to see if you can remember the cell tag as we go through. And the idea here is because every child is different, and we're raising even different ways and different kids in our own household, I'm going to give a whole bunch of ideas today with the hope that you guys will be able to have a few that really work for you. And I think the most important thing today is for you to write down the in-between the lines ideas that come to you in those promptings, and to be able to follow up with those. And then hopefully you'll be able to use notes and revisit things. And remember, we're parenting for a lifetime, so we've got a lot of time to implement things. So when we talk about just the spectrum of the I, we, and you, that focus of self or the relationship or you, usually when kids are younger, they have a natural center. And then as kids get older, we teach them to go into the we. And a we is a combination of the I and the you team. So we're going to talk about that as we go through. The I team are kids who their natural center, they're just more assertive, they're confident to speak, they like to get their way, they're activity-based, they're really good at setting boundaries with other people. They don't do things that they don't really want to, and they have a very clear voice. Now, you can't gauge that for 2 and 3-year-olds because everybody's kind of going through that assertive tantruming phase, but these are kind of smooth out as they get a little older than that. Kids that have their natural center on the you team are kids that are compassionate, they're great listeners, they actually like to give other people their way, and they're introspective and more sensitive, and they're people pleasers. They like to please others. And so this is kind of the contrast. If you can tell if your kids have more of a natural I center or a you center, then you can kind of identify, hey, these parts are natural. I don't really need to teach you empathy because you're really good at that listening on more of a natural base. And you can kind of tailor this as we go through. The base of the model that I have been teaching in character education for more than 20 years is the raft model. So it's the idea that I am responsible for how I act, feel, and think. That's how I teach it to the kids. And it's the idea that you are 100% responsible for all of your actions. So it kind of steps away from, it's not my fault, I didn't do it. It's like, wait a second, you are responsible for everything that you do, all of your actions. And when we talk about kids that have more of the I center, what we need to do is help them slow down their thinking, feeling to action, because their reactions, because they have voice and they're confident and courageous, they act a lot of times without thinking. And on the model, thinking comes first, then you feel, and then you act. So we're just trying to get that reaction time to spread out for them to think before they speak, for them to decide what they're going to do in a more purposeful way. Now, kids on the U team have the exact opposite problem. They're really good at thinking and feeling, and then they just get that little bottleneck where they can't act. They can't move forward and get their actions out or speak up in time. Just a simple example, my son who's on the U team, we're going through the drive-through. What do you want? Oh, I don't want anything. Then we get to the window. Okay, I decided I wanted fries. And it's like your opportunity has passed. Like by the time they get the courage to speak up, a lot of times they've got a lot of missed opportunities. And it's also hard for other people to accommodate when you don't speak up or you don't have voice. So the idea is ask and ye shall receive. Knock and it shall be opened unto you. So that idea that you have is teaching those kids to speak up for what they need so that we can put that in the equation earlier. So that's how the raft model works. Another thought on the self-awareness is just focusing in on the basic needs of that Maslow triangle, just on the bottom, and teaching your kids, hey, you're not your best self if you're hungry, tired, lazy, lonely, or bored. So if you're hungry, you should eat. If you're tired, you should have an early bedtime or take a nap. If you're feeling a little lazy, you should go out and exercise. If you're lonely, and this is something that's important, let your kids know, hey, if you're ever lonely, as your parent, I'll always give you a hug. And when my kids were younger, we had this green rocking chair that we inherited from their great grandma. And I would sit in it and I just thought of myself, my own mothering lap, being their recharging battery. Like I myself recharged their battery. And I would just hold them in that chair and rock them back and forth as much as they need. Even sometimes my older kids just wanted to sit on my lap. But just letting them know, like, hey, if they're lonely, then I am a safe space and you can ask for that connection anytime. And then if you're bored, make a plan. Now, in our family, you won't hear my kids say they're bored. And the reason why is because my husband has this quote that he always says. He says, I am never bored at any time or any place, for being bored is an insult to oneself. So my kids never said they were bored. We have basically a list of things they could do when they needed some activities to do, like, hey, why don't you go outside and look at the sky and make shapes out of the clouds, and why don't you jump on the trampoline with ice cubes? Or we just had a list of creative things that they could do to use their time more wisely. Another idea about self-awareness that I like to teach the kids in character education is the aloha meter. It's the idea that you're monitoring yourself. Now, I went to BYU Hawaii for a time, and I love that campus, and I just went back this last year and spoke there. And alo means share, and ha means the breath of life. So the idea is we're going to share our breath of life. And if you've been to Hawaii, you just feel that spirit, even saying the words aloha, but just teaching the kids that they need to monitor themselves. And, am I high? Am I low? What do I need to self-maintain? So I tell the kids, hey, if you're 4 or below, you need to catch it soon, because if you get to 0, you get sick. And so if you get to be about a 4 on your aloha meter, then you need to take some actions to renew yourself. And so we teach them renew you is just taking some time and space, even when you have deadlines and even when things are stressful, that you would take a space just to renew yourself. And, you can do a bike ride, or, you can see there Serena and Jocelyn are doing quilting. But whatever it does to just kind of help renew yourself so you can start the project new again, and being in charge of their own aloha meter. And so with this, I would encourage you to make a happy list with your kids. And so the idea there is for you to do 10 things that they can do for free and that's fun for them, whatever it is. And then another 10 things that might cost a little bit of money and things that you could make goals towards and get for their happy list. And then have that grow over time. It's something that as adults they can also use. So it's something that's really helpful to develop for them. And then on the self-awareness also, how do they recharge their batteries? Are they out or in? If they're out, they like to do activities with people. They like being outdoors. They like being with others. And if they're in, they like taking time by themselves to recharge. They like to think, and they recharge when they're listening to their music at home. So introverted or extroverted is what that attaches to, but I teach it more simply for the kids as in and out. But them knowing kind of early how they recharge themselves can help them realize, hey, if I'm out a lot and I'm an in person, then I'm going to be a little drained when I go out, and I need to be very purposeful when I'm in, and vice versa for the extroverts. So just having the language to be able to speak this to your kids is something that can be really helpful. The next idea is the brain. And so I like to teach the kids about the upstairs brain, the downstairs brain, the left brain, and the right brain. And I'm going to go over all 4 parts in this presentation today. So this is what I call the downstairs brain. This is where your limbic system is. And this is where your monsters live. This is your reptile thinking brain. This is where it's about pleasure. It's about fight and flight. And it doesn't think very smart down here. It's all about pleasure and you. And then this is the amygdala. It's only the size of a peanut inside your brain. It's just tiny. And then this is your prefrontal cortex, or your smart brain is what we call it for kids. So what happens when you're angry is your amygdala, which is your control center, it flips off. You flip your lid, it flips off your smart brain, and your monsters just kind of start coming and running out. So I just like to teach it to kids so that they can understand, hey, downstairs brain, upstairs brain. I tell them, like, we all have monsters in our brain. Everybody does. And it's just like a little wild 2-year-old in there. And so we've got to learn how to control our monsters. And that brings us into the next S, which is self-control. So having self-control over your monsters. Now, we divided out for kids in our character education into 2 different parts. The first part is that angry monster that comes, and that's the fight part of that natural system that we have. And then there's also what we call the snail monster, because the snails move so slow and leave a trail and have a shell, and that is for the flight or the freeze. And so they freeze as what's going on. And when they freeze, they hold on to a lot of negative emotions. And so so I'm going to go over some techniques to help kids. And I love teaching kids anger management. And I've also done an anger management course for the courts. So the first idea is to give 20 minutes to calm down. The studies are quite clear that if you have really just flipped your lid in a big way and you have that chemical wash of the brain, you need about 20 minutes to be able to calm down. And another thought just for parents is if we do have an angry episode, and for a profession as an attorney mediator, I work with a lot of angry people. I mean, that's my job. And so one thing that's important to note is if they do get angry, they are washed with the chemical. And so it's best for you to try to do some type of activity with them, within a few hours or whenever, that raises their heart rate so they can get rid of those stress hormones and get rid of the excess chemical washing that occurs. So it's just something to think about. And so that's a situation where you actually might want to play tag with them and get their heart rate up. But what we try to teach the kids is we go back to that raft model, distinguishing between thinking and feeling versus acting angry. I tell kids it's okay to think angry and feel angry. I mean, we have the right to our emotions, and it's not a good idea for you to encourage your kids to do something that is not possible. Like, don't ever be angry. It's like, that's not possible. But what we try to teach them, it's okay to think angry and feel angry because that's a natural emotion. But when you act angry, and you involve other people in your acting angry, that's where you cross the boundary. That's where we've got to be extremely careful. That's what ruins relationships. And as you get to be an adult, that's what makes it so you can't work in different workplaces if you're an angry person and being angry, because people don't feel safe around a lot of anger. So that's something that can distinguish for kids. And so a really simple technique is just the square breathing. So I just draw a square and we say, in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4, hold 2, 3, 4. And they can do that at least 3 times and as many times as needed. But square breathing is something that can be helpful for kids. Also, another thing is discovering the emotion in the anger costume. Anger is usually thought of as a secondary emotion. And so there's a primary emotion inside it. Are you frustrated? Are you jealous? Are you upset? Like, what is it that is causing? Are you sad? What is it that's causing the anger? And so as you get to that underlying emotion, it can flip your smart brain back on. Another thing I like to do is sensory magic. We ask the kids to close their eyes for 5 seconds and then open them. What do you see? What are 5 things you see? What are 4 things you hear? What are 3 things you can touch? What are 2 things you can smell? What's 1 thing you can taste? And if you have other kids, like in your car, you can get everybody involved in sensory magic. The idea is it gets them outside of their thinking and feeling and into the present. And a lot of times that can help switch them. Any type of distraction that you can do when you're angry can kind of shift that thinking. Now let's move to some techniques for the snail monster. With the snail monster, remember that's that flight or freeze. And for kids that flight and freeze a lot, when they get in a situation where they have done that, you want to have them break it down and think it through. So we're going to talk about the problem. Hey, what would you have preferred to do? If they can role play that situation, then the next time they're in the situation, they're more likely to have that go-to to be able to move forward. And the studies show that role playing really can help kids. So as a parent, when you're talking about problems, just like, okay, I'll be them, you be you, or switch it around, whichever person you want to be, but give examples and then let them role play it is something that can be really effective. And of course, teaching forgiveness is something that's really important. It's also the heart of the family proclamation, that repentance and forgiveness. And sometimes for kids that are in the flight and freeze, they have a hard time forgiving and actually even bringing it up with the person. And so the research with Kenneth Cloak talks about a surrogate apology. And that's where you, as the parent, give an apology. So it's like, wow, Amy is really sorry for what she did. She realizes that she shouldn't have been mean to you and she shouldn't have pushed you. She just wasn't thinking, and she really feels badly about it. So even though Amy didn't give the apology, you give a surrogate apology, and that can help with forgiveness. Another idea, if they don't want to directly work with the forgiveness space, is that they can also, in their mind, go through a scenario where they apologize to the person and the person apologizes back. And that can just what we call close the box. So that's an idea that I share with people, is that when you have a problem or a conflict, a box is open and everything can get in the box. And when you're done with it, you need to close the box. And closing the box is also a symbol on that raft where you are not going to be, if your mind, your little 2-year-old monster in there wants to go back to thinking and feeling about that past problem, that you will do a distraction, let it go. I tell kids, change the channel. Like if you're sitting in front of a TV and there is a show you don't like and no one else is in the room, you're going to change the channel. Same thing with your mind. Have channels you can change. Have images and pictures ready to go. Have music ready to go so that you can easily just change the channel. And so when we talk to kids about resentment, we talk to them it's as an anger rock. It's a past problem that is staying inside your heart. It's a past problem that you are holding on to. And so we want to teach them to let go of anger rocks as they go through. The idea of the thought transfer is for kids to let go of the anger rocks through writing down and organizing all of their ideas, figuring out solutions or not, and then they can just rip it up and throw it in the garbage. Also, other therapists that I work with the kids, the high-risk kids that I deal with in my law practice, a lot of times they'll tell them they hold a little stuffed animal, and the stuffed animal will have some type of pocket or something, and they can write down the little situation and they'll put it in the stuffed animal to worry about it, and then they can bring that back out when they need to talk about it with the counselor or a parent. So those are some ideas. And then another fun thing is just in that same vein, teaching kids that they can schedule a time to feel negative feelings. And so one thing that I think is really important to break down and understand is that anxiety is thinking about something in the future negatively that hasn't yet occurred, whereas depression is thinking of a past memory negatively. And so if you kind of know that that's what it is, with anxiety, it's like, look, that hasn't even occurred yet. Let's worry about it if it actually happens. And with depression, it's like, hey, let's figure out how to close the box, or in research they call come to terms with things that have happened inside the past so that we can move forward in a really healthy way. So using the kids' imagination to see success in their mind, to kind of create that pathway that they want, can be really important. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we can talk about that. And when we do that, we can use the ABCDE method, which I'm going to teach you in this presentation, so that we're not just worrying about it, that we have a plan of how we're going to deal with things. Another way that we teach kids self-control is through teaching them good habits, and I do it through the habit hat. It's an acronym. The HAT stands for habit stack, accountability partner, and 3-minute rule. So a habit stack is basically attaching a new habit to an old habit. So let's just say that your kids are trying to build a habit to say their own prayers every morning. Then you would say to them, okay, so before you brush your teeth, make sure you always say your prayers, because brushing teeth is already a habit they have. So you're stacking the habit together. An accountability partner is them engaging with a friend or a family member or someone else to do the habit with them, or to hold them accountable and ask how things are going. The 3-minute rule is just the idea that it's better to do something on your floor for 3 minutes, your floor of it, the smallest you'll do, then not at all. And then, of course, you'll have your ceiling as well, the things when you'll do it big. I went into my son's room yesterday, and I looked on his chart, his goal chart, and one was to exercise 20 minutes a day. So instead of him exercising for 20 minutes a day, he can't do that. At least he would exercise for 3 minutes, because doing something is so much better than doing nothing. And an all or nothing approach doesn't work well when establishing a habit. When we talk about self-control, I tell kids, we teach them the 24-hour rule. They have 24 hours to kind of work through problems so they're not holding on to those anger rocks. And so I teach kids the talking square. There's 4 main ways to problem solve. The first is with yourself, and you can just work it out yourself and transcend it yourself. And you can do thought transfers and the things that we've talked about to get it processed yourself. The second is to talk to the other person involved. The third is to talk to a trusted friend, not just any friend, but a trusted friend that would give good advice. And the fourth is to talk to a trusted adult, a parent, a teacher, a counselor. So having those 4 options, and I tell kids, if one of those options doesn't work, then try another until you can get it resolved. The idea of good problem solving is to keep people in the present, where we don't have a lot of past problems and baggage. I tell people like they've got a little backpack on. They don't have a lot of baggage from past. They're living in the present so they can feel that full joy. And we're getting over anything in the past that's occurred so that we can move forward in a really healthy way. So kids get really excited about the idea of becoming a brain Jedi when it comes to self-control. The left brain is in control of numbers, letters, words, facts, logic. Whereas the right brain is in control of pictures, emotions, and imagination. And so if you want to become a brain Jedi, you want to switch into left brain. So when would you want to switch into left brain? Well, when you have a lot of emotion, you're sad, you're worried, you're angry, you're in your right brain in a negative way. So you want to flip over to left brain. So the easiest way I like to teach kids to do it, because remember, left is numbers and facts, is to do math facts. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 3 is 9. Or even like, what's 11 times 12? Something a little harder for them. But as they do math facts, it can switch them over to the logic center. Or spelling words is another one. That is the same reason that in the anger costume in the limbic system, when you're in that right, when you name it to tame it, when you find the secondary emotion, anger, and find what the primary emotion is in the costume, it switches from that emotion over to the words. And that's the same reason that your smart brain gets flipped on. Also, taking your feelings from thoughts down to words and writing about it is another right brain to left brain activity. And then I think it's really important for all kids to have an affirmation. This is an affirmation: I am a good person and I love myself. That's my affirmation. My subconscious made it up without me even consciously doing it. And I repeat it to myself in the strangest situations. I'm like, what am I stressed or worried about? And I'll just repeat it about 5 times. I'm a good person and I love myself. I'm a good person and I love myself. Now, notice with affirmations, it needs to be something that your subconscious can actually believe. So it shouldn't be like, I am the most amazing, awesome person in the world, because your subconscious is like, nope, I'm not going to believe that. So you want to have neutral or slightly positive and not negative at all, but you want to have an affirmation that the kids that works really well for them. One of my sons, their school works on the 7 habits for highly effective people. And so his affirmation has to do with it because it's something he's already memorized. So you want them to own it and have something that really works for them. And then you can put that on their mirror. Then to switch into right brain, that is when you have negative self-talk And that's where the left brain can really get negative. So that's where you need to switch over into going into your happy place in your mind. And again, we teach kids to use their senses. Like, close your eyes. Where is your happy place? What do you see? What do you hear? What do you smell? Like, all of those things so they can really get there. Another idea that I like to teach the kids is to use their imagination to lock their monster in the closet. We even have them draw pictures of what their monster looks like, or monsters. Some kids tell me, I don't have just one monster. I have several monsters. So we have them lock them in the closet in their mind and throw away the key. Or they can close their eyes, think of their favorite pictures, or you could even have pictures on a device that they could look through to kind of help them switch into that right brain thinking. And so it's nice for you to just work with your kids to see what's their easiest left brain activity. What's their easiest right brain activity? When do you switch to left? When you're in high emotion. When do you switch to right? When you've got negative self-talk. And teach them how to do the crisscross. So now you know the downstairs limbic monster brain, your upstairs prefrontal cortex smart brain, and your left brain and your right brain. If they just know those 4 simple functions of the brain, it can really empower them to do something great and to take self-control on things. And so teaching positive self-talk is going to be really important, especially to kids that are on the U team. They tend to have a lot of negative self-talk about themselves. They're really kind to other people, please other people, but they're really hard in their self-talk to themselves. So it's something you really want to work on with kids and talk to them about their self-talk when they're young so they realize, hey, it's normal. And it's interesting because the studies show that about 80% of our thoughts are naturally negative. And so it's like the natural man is an enemy to God. And that's where Satan can kind of tempt you, is through your thoughts. But Satan can't make you feel and can't make you act. And so if you have a negative thought, it doesn't mean it's your own thought. It could be just a temptation. It's not till you sit on it and stretch it and spend time with it that it becomes your own thought and own feeling and own actions. So just helping kids know that everything that comes through their mind isn't their own, I think is just liberating for kids to know. I love this quote by Elder Uchtdorf. He stated, "Patience, the ability to put our desires on hold for a time, is a precious and rare virtue. We want what we want, and we want it now. Indeed, patience is a purifying process that refines understanding, deepens happiness, focuses attention, and offers hope for peace. As parents, we know how unwise it would be to indulge our children's every desire. But children are not the only ones who spoil when showered with immediate gratification. Our Heavenly Father knows what good parents come to understand over time. If children are ever going to mature and reach their potential, they must learn to wait." So I love this idea of teaching kids that you wait for good things. And the idea also that we can parent as our Heavenly Father parents, as a great model. So when we teach our kids to wait for good things, that's about self-control. And self-control is not doing something that you want to do. You can see here that Serena in the picture, her mom has asked her, hey, don't eat the chocolate bar for 15 minutes. And if you don't eat it, I'm going to give you a second chocolate bar. But if you do eat it, that's all you're going to get. The idea that, hey, you can get more when you wait for things. And contrast that to self-discipline. That's doing something that you don't want to do. Here you can see little Tiffany talking to Zach and Farah. She had a problem. She didn't want to problem solve and talk out loud, but she knew she needed to do it. So she was doing self-discipline in something that was hard for her to do, but she did it anyway. And sometimes just distinguishing those differences can help you teach your kids in different ways. Now we're going to move over to some skills for the U team. And so when you're talking about another person, at the heart of emotional intelligence is empathy. And so there's a couple things key things I want you to teach your kids. First is the importance of apology. For people that are on the U team, the words "I'm sorry" mean I care. Whereas people on the I team, the words "I'm sorry" mean I'm wrong. And so they rarely think they're wrong. So they're very rarely going to use apology. But if you can just train your kids, hey, the words I'm sorry mean I care. You can teach them to put an apology out when it is their fault. You can see kids a lot of times are like, it's not my fault. It's like, whoa. I would sit my kids on the couch when they were younger and say, you sit on the couch until you can think about what your portion of responsibility is. Because of course, with 6 kids in 10 years, there's a lot of fighting that goes back and forth. And to me, it's a really cool opportunity to be able to teach them, hey, look, there's problems that come in life. You're going to have problems with your spouse and problems with your friends and coworkers. So what do you do when you have a problem? Well, we work it through. And I'm going to teach you how to work through those problems right here in our house. You're going to have a model for it. So we teach them to understand the other person's perspective, and we're going to teach them conflict resolution skills. And so when we basically want to teach them empathy, there's just a few little things that I want you to focus on. So when I was in 8th grade, my sister and nephew were killed in a tragic car accident. And it was a very difficult time for me, obviously. And it changed and shaped my life and shaped who I am. But when I went back to school right after the funeral, I felt invisible. And I felt invisible because people and my friend group and people that would normally talk to me didn't talk to me. They avoided me. Why? Because they didn't know what to say. And so it's like hurt was placed onto hurt. So I decided to write a little book for kids so that they would know, hey, here's how you show up for people that are really sad or going through a hard time. And so I call it the salsa method. So number 1 is that you show up. So you show up in person if possible. If not, you could call, and a text is better than nothing. Then the A is asking a support-based question. Like, are you okay? Or do you want to talk about it? Or I heard about your sister. How are things going? But you don't want to say, how are you doing? Because obviously they're doing horrible. And so you want to change up your support-based question. Then you want to listen to understand, and you want to let them share whatever story they want to tell about it. Let them share that openly. And then the share an apology is where that I'm sorry comes in. You say, I'm sorry that happened. I'm so sorry you're going through this. That I'm sorry means I care. And that's why with empathy, it's so important to teach your kids that the words I'm sorry translate over to I care. And then if you're going to share a lesson that you've learned, you need to do it in a way where you focus on the solution. So, hey, when I lost my brother, I found that writing in my journal is something that really helped me. If you go long into your story, then the person you came to comfort has to comfort you. And you don't want to switch those roles. So if they do want to say, hey, ask questions, answer the questions, but don't go into a long narrative about what's important for you, because that makes it so they have to comfort you. And that brings the difference between speaking inductively and deductively. People on the I team really a lot of times speak deductively. And I teach that to kids, saying they speak in backward stories. So they give the conclusion and a few bullets. And so that's how you want to speak here on this empathy. When you're speaking about a topic that's not about their grief, you want to give the conclusion, my brother died, and the bullet, and I learned to write in my journal. Whereas when you tell a forward story or the inductive process, it's like once upon a time in the middle of the woods, right? You start from the beginning, then you go to the middle, and then you go to the end. And so when you're speaking beginning, middle to end, that's how someone would be speaking in that listening to understand phase, because you speak that way to elicit empathy. And so you want to make sure that you're repeating back the emotion words when you're doing that listening. So if you hear any type of emotion word, then you say at the end, wow, you're really sad and hurt by this. Capture those emotion words, put them in your pockets, teach kids that one thing. That's simply what validation is on its most simple level. The easiest way to teach it to kids, validation, is hey, repeat back feeling words identically. Don't change frustrated to angry. Don't put a new label on it, because people are very cautious about the way they label their feeling-based words. So if you want to teach your kids this shortest shortcut to empathy and to validation, it's repeating back that word with exactness. So I do that as a mediator. If I hear any type of emotion-based word, I always repeat it back so that they can feel that empathy and validation. So when we're sharing that lesson we've learned, we're going to do it in a backward story, but we understand that when they're storytelling, they're going to tell us in a forward story. And so just knowing the difference between backwards and forward story. People commonly that tell backward stories, if you're telling a forward story, they're always trying to get to the end, guess the ending, right? Because they need to know the end before the beginning. And it's like, you're spoiling the book, spoiler alert, right? But just teaching kids to honor that there's not a right way to communicate or a wrong way, that there's just different ways, and that we need to honor the I team and the we team and the you team. We need to honor all the ways people will communicate. And at the end of that salsa method, it's action, doing some type of act of kindness or a symbol of caring. When people are going through grief cycles, time stops for them, and they actually remember everything in that cycle of time that occurs when they're outside of their normal routine. And so an act of caring, giving flowers or a stuffed animal or a necklace or a silk pillowcase or bringing a dessert. It doesn't really matter what it is, but just using that salsa method to be able to show empathy. Okay, now we're getting to the listening and the love. So we want to teach kids good listening. I say listening eyes, listening ears, a listening mouth is really quiet, and a listening heart. And so we want to teach kids to be a good listener. We want them to know, hey, am I a talker or am I a listener? The listening pattern is one where someone talks, and when they're done, they ask a question and hand it to the other person, and then it's their turn to talk. The talking pattern is different. The talking pattern is where you grab the stick through interrupting when you want to talk, and they grab it and you grab it. So it works fine as long as everybody's playing by the same rules. So talkers playing with talking rules works, and listeners playing with listening rules works. But what doesn't work well is when you mix. So when a talker talks to a listener, the talker will grab the stick, but the listener will never grab it back. And so they're waiting for it to be passed, and the talker's waiting for it to be taken, and that's where you get a lot of miscommunication occurring. So just letting kids know that there's a talking pattern where you interrupt, you can practice that, and a listening pattern where you take turns one at a time can be something that can really help them understand, oh, I didn't realize there's different rules to the way that people speak. I team usually speaks through the interruptions, the U team usually speaks through passing the stick. And so that's something that's really important to understand. And so if you have that kid where it's like, how was your day? It was good. What are you doing? Nothing. How are you? Fine. Like those one-word answer kids. You want to teach them how to stretch out and talk in 3 sentences instead of just one. So you could ask a question, hey, what would be your favorite vacation? And instead of just saying Hawaii, you'd have them stretch it out. And you can teach kids to stretch out by who, what, where, when, why, and how, teaching them the 6 question words, and then having them kind of think those through in their mind as they can stretch out their information. And then you can pass the ball to the next person that would need to summarize in at least 2 or more sentences. And you can practice with kids to learn how to listen and learn how to talk more on the I team or the U team, and being very purposeful about understanding the different patterns and how they go. Now I want to talk about the cross bridge, which is love. Love thy neighbor as thyself. So the 2 great commandments, love thy neighbor as thyself. So for the I team, it's kind of how traditionally you think of the scripture, that you need to love other people as much as you love yourself. And that makes sense. But for the U team, I think there's something really important to think about, is that you need to love yourself as much as you love other people. So we have that weight that we're trying to balance with kids, that yourself and other people, and that you're really trying to move in and give love to yourself, being kind to yourself as you are to others, or being kind to others as you are to yourself. So I just love that idea of balancing and making sure that kids on the U team are knowing that they need to learn to assert themselves and be kind to themselves and give themselves a fair share. And so those are things that you can work on as you go through your lifetime of parenting. I'm actually love the family proclamation. And I even have a proclamation house, and I love it. And my favorite part of it is happiness in family life is most likely to be achieved when founded upon the teachings of the Lord Jesus Christ. Successful marriages and families are established and maintained on principles of, here they are, faith, prayer, repentance, forgiveness, respect, love, compassion, work, and wholesome recreational activities. I love this proclamation, and I've made it into the house with the faith and prayer, repentance, forgiveness, and then the heart, that respect and love and compassion, and then work and wholesome recreational activities. When things get hard with your kids, stick with the edges. Faith and prayer, and then, hey, I know in our family, even when kids in our family were going through a difficult time, my dad could always get us out on the boat. We had that family recreational activity that we love to do together as a family. And so keep up your wholesome recreational. I tell in the parent-teen programs that I worked, I used to transition kids from jail into their households. And I would tell parents, flood them with positivity, because you have to have more in common with your child than the problem. And so expand out things you like to do together. Plan fun events. Work side by side together. Use those wholesome recreational activities. And then you can get to, now let's work together. And then you can kind of get to that heart of the respect and love and compassion. Now we're moving over to the T for the tag part. We're moving into those we team ideas. So teamwork is how we teach kids working with others and reaching goals together. This is kind of the heart of moving forward with emotional intelligence. So understanding the people, knowing those small tricks for empathy and listening and love and connection, and then moving into the teamwork. I like to teach kids 3 different types of teamwork. And with my own kids, we do it in a very purposeful way. So a competitive team is basically playing some type of team sport. It could be soccer, it could be rugby, football, like whatever it is for your child. And you can use those really cool like rec center, like 6-week things to kind of help kids to practice, one, being timely, attending practices, trying your best, supporting teammates, being a good winner, and more importantly, know how to be a good loser. I tell my kids, you can feel upset on the inside, but you need to act good on the outside. And so you can teach them a lot of things of teamwork through that competitive team model. Then there's the adventure team. That's doing something like rock climbing together or boating or river rafting together. And it's really fun to do that as a family team. We did river rafting together as a family team, and it was something that was just really exciting for us as a team to do. But that's where we need to understand safety precautions. We need to follow directions with exactness. We need to make sure that they're doing their part and working hard. And one of the biggest things to teach the kids is there's a time to goof off and a time not to goof off. And so there will be play hard only when the time is right, and then enjoy conquering the goal together. And then, of course, one of my favorites, the creative team, because I'm a creative. Brainstorming ideas together. So having things as a family that you're brainstorming together, working on, doing combo options, even group work for school, setting expectations for each team member's role, keeping your commitment, doing your part, and combining your efforts together. And so teamwork is where you can get a lot of mileage over teaching kids this emotional IQ that's so important. And so you want to set up these opportunities for your kids. And even when things don't go well, it's something that is a really good learning lesson for them. And for myself, I really love when they have a friend that does something wrong or goes through the hard time. I like to sit down and break that down for my kids to say, hey, what lessons are we learning from that mistake you didn't make? I mean, let's learn from other people's mistakes, and let's be purposeful about the way that we teach that as parents. And the most important team that there is the family team. I tell my kids that we're a family team, so pretend like we're a soccer team. What would happen if somebody on our team just started to make the goals for the other team? Or what if someone just went out there and started dancing instead of playing soccer? The idea that what one child does affects the other children. So we had a rule in our family, and developing family rules is important, but we had a rule that you had to get along with your siblings, that as siblings we're best friends, and that took came from my own household because my mom and dad taught me that same rule. So if our kids have a friend over and they're not being kind to one of their siblings, they'll get a warning, of course, and then a second one, and then on the third time, I would just take the friend home. And they knew I was serious about it. I didn't, it's the 3 strike you're out rule. And so it gives time for kids to comply, because that's what I really want, is them to comply and change their behavior. And then it gives a really steady consequence for them. And so you develop family rules, and you develop a family vision statement and a family motto to know that your family is something special. And so in our family, it was really simple. It's pray hard, work hard, think hard, play hard. We developed this over a decade ago. Our family is all about this motto. So we pray a lot in our family. We read our scriptures, we attend church together, we do our church duty. We're part of the STP, which is the same 10 people that stay to clean up for every little church activity. And our kids know, like, hey, that's part of being a Fackrell. And then we work really hard too. And the biggest way that Jake and I have taught our kids hard work is through Saturday chores. And we're really big on Saturday chores, and we do a lot of hard work on Saturday chores. And I kind of think like, oh, they're complaining. Awesome. Like, we've stretched them to their limit, And so we've taught them to work hard through a very consistent pattern of Saturday chores. And of course, also daily chores, but Saturday chores get stretched out really, really, really long. Thinking hard has to do with them participating in their schoolwork and trying their best. And then we are definitely also a play hard family. We spend dedicated time playing. And one of the pictures on this slide, you can see for Christmas this last year, we took a portion of our Christmas money and we donated it to a orphanage in Uganda. And then we were able to FaceTime with the orphans and watch them open the gifts that we had given them. It was such a really special experience to kind of show our kids that the world is bigger than us, and we have so much to be grateful for. So we want to be creating opportunities for our kids to show them about what our motto is about. And of course, every family will have their own motto, but knowing what it is and repeating it often is something that can help kids feel part of a family team. And of course, kind of back to that salsa method, the first one, the show up principle, the family team showing up is a really important part of life. So we teach our kids they need to show up for their duty. They've got to go to youth night, even if they don't want to. Like, hey, we're doing it. Church activities, we're going to church. We're doing our duty. You've got to go to practices if you attend a team. We're going to teach them also to be dependable for their family and their core friends. Core friends are the top 5 people in your life that aren't family that you're going to spend a lot of energy on. So your core friends. And when my kids were really young, we had a little family lesson where we said, hey, life is like having a deck of cards, your rook cards. And if you're going to have a whole bunch of 2s in your deck. And when you have a 2, we want to show up for each other. And when you also have your 12s and, your big cards in the deck as well, we want to show up for each other. So this year, when my son got in a really serious cliff jumping accident, we were all working together as a family team. There's things that happen in your life that you need your family and friends to show up for. So we want to teach our kids to be accountable that way. And also I tell my kids, you've got to be where you are supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Because a lot of trouble happens when they're in a place where they're not supposed to be. And so, we're always saying, hey, you're supposed to be here and you weren't. That was the problem. It's like the base of one of our family rules is you need to be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. So that's something that can help. President Kimball stated, "We hope we can help our young men and young women to realize, even sooner than they do now, that they need to make certain decisions only once. I have mentioned at this pulpit before some determinations made early in my life, which decisions were such a help to me because I did not have to remake those decisions perpetually. We can push some things away from us once and be done with them. We can make a single decision about certain things that we will incorporate in our lives and then make them ours without having to brood and redecide 100 times what it is we will do and what we will not do." I love this idea. And when you want to talk about the research base of what President Kimball's saying, it's called decision fatigue. It's about people who don't make final decisions about things, or they get into peer pressure situations. So we want to teach our kids, hey, we follow the 4 strengths of youth in our family. And even in our scripture study that we had this week, the idea that I came up with is like, bottom line is our family, we follow the prophet. We follow what the prophet says. And so just making those decisions one time so you don't have the decision fatigue that comes from making it over and over and over again. Some things you can do as a parent to help your kids is to develop a family password, like a word like gun lock, our little heaven on earth that we have. So developing a family password. So I'm never going to send a stranger to pick up my kids without the family password. Hey, I'm here to pick you up. Your mom sent me, what's our password? If they don't have the password, trust me, they weren't sent from me. But one that's even more important than that is, for example, you could use a semicolon on the text. Hi, Mom, semicolon. That means that the child wants you to say no, or to bring them home, or to come get them. Hi, Mom, semicolon. Can I go to the mall? Question mark. No, sorry, you can't. I also tell my kids, hey, I always have chores that need to be done at our house. And so if you need to say no to your friends, you can always say, hey, I'm sorry, my mom needs me to go home and do a project. And I tell them, then do a few minutes of a project when you get home. But you can always blame me to get out of difficult situations. And I've always told my kids, if I'm available, I will drive. The reason I like to drive my kids is because teenagers, for some reason, forget that adults are in the car, and you find out so many things just by being super quiet and listening to the teenagers talk. So I tell my kids, I am always available to do the driving. If I'm available, like I'm your girl, I will do the driving for you. But it's helped me having these systems to get kids out of situations that's been difficult for them with peer pressure and things where they were feeling uncomfortable, an out system. So take the time to develop that out system for your kids as well. I love this quote, and I was just talking to my teenage son about this the other day. You are a child of God. You have His power within you to sustain you. You have the right to call upon God to protect you. Do not let Goliath frighten you. Stand your ground and hold your place, and you will be triumphant. As the years pass, you will look back with satisfaction upon the battles you have won in your individual lives. And that's the idea of just letting kids know that Goliaths will come, but they need to stand their ground and make that decision only once. Now to the famous ABCDE model, the A. This is the model, it's actually a mediation model, and it's what I do professionally to work through problem solving. So, back 20 years ago, I made it into the ABCDE so that I can help teach kids. So it's ask, brainstorm, choose, do the plan, examine, and we repeat it over and over again. Asking questions and listening, brainstorming ideas. And remember, you don't judge ideas when you're brainstorming. That's the choose phase. So when you're brainstorming, you don't judge. Brainstorm ideas, choose, then you do the plan, and then really importantly, you examine how it went. What am I going to do differently in the future? What have I learned from the past? And writing things down. So this is the famous ABCDE process that I use as a mediator, and that really can help with creativity processes, being proactive in your life. If you need a worry list, like, hey, use ABCDE. Also with siblings, teaching them how to use ABCDE as well when they're problem solving. And one thing I wanted to mention using this process with kids is we use a talking toy when they were little. And so one would talk only when they have the toy, because in problem solving, you don't want to have the talking interrupting pattern. And so to control that, they could only talk when they have a toy. Then they pass it to the other person, and then they get to talk and they can't interrupt. And then after you pass it back, now summarize what they said, because that's an important part of empathy. And I think one of the most important things when you're using this method is that, and teaching kids, is that agreeing is not, understanding another person is not the same as agreeing with them. Let me say that one more time. Understanding another person is not the same as agreeing. If they can learn that one thing, that summarizing a person and understanding where they're coming from doesn't mean you agree with them. It's so important when we talk about emotional intelligence and empathy for that one thing to be understood. So when you're in this ask phase and you're talking about things and you're understanding the other person, it doesn't mean you agree. And then you can go through and brainstorm, choose, do the plan, and examine. The ABCDE method is great for problems of all sizes. And first, you can use them to ask the question from 0 to 10, how important is the problem to them? Now, kids on the I team tend to over-engage. They engage on problems of all sizes, and you want to teach them, hey, if it's 0 to 4, let the other person have their way. It's not that important to you. And then kids on the U team, they tend to minimize problems, and you want to say, hey, look, you need to talk about things that are from a 5 to an 8 and above. If it's above a 5, you need to learn how to talk about it and use that talking square that we've already talked about. I wanted to mention ghost conflicts because this is something that comes a lot up, especially with the U team. And as a mediator, I'm mediating ghost conflicts all the time. It's a problem that you have with another person and you do not talk about it or get their perspective. And in the law, you would never find someone guilty without giving them an opportunity to have say or to defend themselves. So for you to go through a process in your mind where you didn't directly go to the source and get information from them, not through a third party at all, because third parties in the law, that person has the right to show up. You don't send a friend or someone else or their mom. It's that person. So you don't get their perspective and then you twist the story in a negative way. And what I find as I mediate is, hey, a lot of the conflicts aren't real. They thought something happened or they thought they were mad, but they're not. And what you learn from the I team and U team is that, hey, they don't process the same. They don't feel the same. They don't think the same. And a lot of people feel like, hey, other people output the same way I do. And it's simply not the truth. You need to honor differences and avoid ghost conflicts. And so we're to that G, goal. Set the goal as a family team and accomplish them. And celebrate failures that occur, celebrate successes that occur. We have a big thing in our family of celebrating failures. My kids have tried out for student council and basketball teams and all sorts of things, and they failed. And when they do, they know that our family is going to go out to dinner and celebrate their failure because I tell them success is on the other side of failure. You have to fail at a lot of things to get there. So it's the people that are persistent on the failure track that make a lot of good in the world. So I want to teach them to know that failure is a part of life and it's something that they need to go through, because if they're only going to do things that they succeed at, it's hard for them to grow. And I love the new goal program that the church has come up with, the SIP program, the spiritual, social, intellectual, physical, setting those goals. And then also the pattern, the circle, discover, plan, act, reflect. It's genius. It's so beautiful that we're going to try to encourage our kids for a lifetime and even as adults to set goals in spiritual, social, intellectual, and physical, and to use this pattern. So we use this a lot with our kids. Even one of my sons and his wife, they set goals on a weekly basis. They sit down together on a weekly basis and set these goals. We've also used this in a really awesome way for our adult children. So as we've seen other people kind of leave the church and their kids leave the church, my husband and I, did a couple counsel and hey, what can we do for our kids? And we decided that doing personal priesthood interview and using that family council model that our family loves so much. Our kids call family councils, we do. It's something that we just eat up and love. And so my husband has done personal priesthood interviews one-on-one with their kids growing up throughout their whole childhood. And we decided we were going to continue it as kids are adults. And so he meets with them and he tries to do it quarterly. And he also meets with the in-law kids. So for the daughter-in-laws, I meet together and it's just a 15-minute little interview. And he actually goes through this goal sheet that the church provided, the spiritual, social, intellectual, physical. And then he takes a picture of it, sends it to them. And then before they meet again, he sends it out, say, hey, here's what you were kind of working on. We're going to check in on that. But just having him as a spiritual leader, that he's holding them accountable. It's something in the scriptures that Alma does to his adult children. And then on the reverse, you have Samuel and Eli not doing it for his adult children, not holding them accountable. It's just a way to stay present in a spiritual manner inside your kids' lives, and it can be something that's really beautiful. To end, I want to just talk about studying your child's disposition. Brigham Young has said, bring up your child in the love and fear of the Lord. Study their dispositions and their temperaments, and deal with them according, never allowing yourself to correct them in the heat of passion. Teach them to love you rather than to fear you. That's that idea also found in D&C 121, just having that increase of love for your kids. And so one way that you can understand your kids' disposition, besides the you and I team, is honing in on their specific learning styles. So just easy for eye patterns, because kids' eye patterns are so raw. If they look up in their thinking, that's visual. If they look ear to ear, that's auditory. If they look down, that's kinesthetic. And if they're remembering, most commonly if they're right-handed, it goes to the right. If you're thinking of the future, it goes to the left. You can see my eye patterns are visual because I'm a visual person. And so I'm giving you all my secrets that I use to be a good mediator. So I look at people's visual eye patterns, and then you adjust. Just a few adjustments you can make. For example, for a visual child, let's just say they're sitting watching TV and you're like, dinner time, come on. And they cannot hear you. They're visual. They're focusing in on the TV. It's better for you to go in front of the TV and be, hey, time for dinner, come on, let them see you. And then also those kids, you want to have them to sit in front. We want them to be able to see the chalkboard. Visual people tend to like variation in color. They understand it better when it's written. And so in mediation, when I tell people things and they're still not getting it, I write it down for them. I'm like, oh, they're visual. That's how they can get it. Or you can use flashcards. The auditory kids, ear to ear, you need to be very cautious in verbal criticism with them because it sears their heart and they remember those words over and over again. You want to praise them often. Using music is a big thing for them, to even teach them things through music. My little son, I taught him his name, Presedon, and we would sing it. But they're going to tend to do better listening to an audiobook than reading it. So you can do hey, let's read and listen, but listening is going to be better for them. And you want them to rehearse things they hear and speak it to themselves. That's how they're more likely to remember. And then kinesthetic kids, they look down. Kinesthetic people are just wiggly. Their foot is constantly wiggling. They don't like to stay still. And in fact, if they are staying still and looking at you, they're not listening. So for my kids that were younger, we would actually put Velcro in their desk. We'd get permission from their teachers, and we'd have the hard and the soft side so that they can just rub it to try to recharge their mind when they're in their learning setting. So there's things that you can do, but for the kinesthetic kids, they have to have a concrete example to understand it. But once the light bulb goes on, they don't forget it. And so they sense moods, and they're really good with their hands usually. But if you can kind of tailor into what learning style works best for your kids, then you can better work with them. And when I was working with the juvenile court, a lot of the kids were kinesthetics, and I would tell the parents, hey, don't talk to the kids eye to eye. Go up and help them clean their room, or make a dessert or cookies together. That's when you get them to talk, because kinesthetic people usually would talk more side to side than they do eye to eye. And so doing and also teaching is going to be the most important with the kinesthetic kids. And so now we're back to the beginning, just a wrap up, that emotional intelligence, the studies show that it's important for good marriages and good workplaces. It's something really important to teach kids. And the younger you teach to them, the more it just becomes integrated. I hope that I've helped develop a language that you can talk to them about these issues, that you've found some things that will work for you. Remember, I is self, you is the other person involved, we is the relationship, and then the goals. So managing ourselves and our relationships so that we can reach our goals. And now I have the quiz on the cell tag. Do you guys remember what it is? So the first S, that's right, self-awareness. then self-control, E, empathy, and then the 2 L's, listening and love, and then T, teamwork, A, B, C, D, E, G, goals. And so as you can teach your kids just little by little, one by one, to learn these things. And, parenting is a process for a lifetime. That is what I really want you to know is we're teaching this to our kids over a lifetime. It's not over when they're 18 years old. We're going to be there steady for our kids for a lifetime. And I pray that the Lord will bless you in your parenting because it is one of the most important things you'll do in your life. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.